Think of a massive glacier carving its way through a valley. It doesn't negotiate with the landscape. It just slowly, steadily pushes forward, crushing whatever stands in its way by sheer mass alone. In the early days of computing, that glacier was Microsoft. Bill Gates and Paul Allen started out by writing code for primitive machines like the Altair 8800, which relied on physical switches and tiny lights. From those roots, they built an operating system empire. By the late 1990s, almost 90% of all personal computers on Earth were running a version of Windows. They were so massive that their only real threat wasn't a competitor, but the United States government stepping in to break up their monopoly. To avoid antitrust lawsuits, Microsoft actually had to ensure a rival stayed alive. In 1997, they threw a $150 million financial lifeline to a struggling, near-bankrupt company named Apple. When you reach a point where you can casually fund your biggest rival just to keep regulators off your back, you start to believe you're invincible. That supreme confidence set the stage for a period of profound corporate blindness. Apple used that investment to survive, rebuild, and eventually bypass the desktop entirely. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage and revealed the iPhone, a pocket-sized touch device without a physical keyboard or a stylus. Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer openly laughed at the announcement. He mocked the $500 price tag. He pointed out the lack of a physical keyboard, claiming it would never appeal to business customers. At the time, Microsoft's own mobile offering, Windows Mobile, relied on outdated software originally designed for tiny handheld PCs. Yet inside the company, the record-breaking sales of their desktop software made them feel entirely insulated from any risk. Ballmer's dismissal of the iPhone demonstrated a massive strategic error. The definition of a personal computer had moved from the desk to the pocket, and the executives in charge were the last ones to see it. Following the iPhone's release, the mobile market rapidly split in two. Apple locked down the premium, closed ecosystem segment, building both the hardware and the software. To capture everyone else, Google launched Android as an open, budget-friendly operating system for other manufacturers to use. Microsoft tried to play both sides with their new Windows Phone OS. They wanted to license their software to outside manufacturers like Google did, but they imposed strict hardware rules, demanding specific processors and button layouts to control the experience. Phone makers were trapped. They could either struggle to meet Microsoft's rigid demands or build freely with Android. Almost every manufacturer chose Google. Without hardware partners willing to mass-produce the devices, Microsoft was left sitting on a smooth, highly capable operating system, but they had no physical phones to put it on. By attempting to dictate strict terms in a mobile market they didn't yet dominate, Microsoft successfully alienated the exact manufacturing partners they needed to survive. This lack of physical phones triggered a secondary crisis, known as the app gap. Because so few people owned a Windows phone, independent developers refused to spend time building apps for it. For years, platforms like YouTube and Instagram simply weren't available. Desperate for hardware, Microsoft turned to Nokia. They began paying the Finnish manufacturer hundreds of millions of dollars every single quarter, effectively subsidizing them to be the sole producer of Windows Phone devices, like the Lumia series. By 2014, even that arrangement wasn't enough. Nokia's stock was crashing. To keep their entire mobile ecosystem from collapsing overnight, Microsoft bought Nokia's mobile division outright for over $7 billion. Despite billions of dollars spent, endless marketing campaigns, and forcing their own hardware production, Windows Phone's global market share plummeted. At its lowest point, it hovered at just 2%. No amount of corporate wealth could buy a thriving developer ecosystem. Consumers had made their choice between iOS and Android, and the mobile war was over. Amidst the wreckage of the Nokia acquisition and plummeting market relevance, Microsoft changed leadership in 2014. Satya Nadella, an executive who had grown up inside the company, took over as CEO. Nadella looked at the billions burning in the mobile division and made a brutal calculation. He accepted defeat in the smartphone sector, writing off the Nokia purchase and permanently shutting down active development of the Windows Phone operating system. Internally, the shock was immense. For decades, Microsoft's identity was built on forcing users into the Windows ecosystem. Now, Nadella was directing his engineers to build their best software, like Office, directly for their rivals' iOS and Android devices. By killing the company's ultimate ego project, Nadella demonstrated that humility, rather than stubborn persistence, was the only viable path to saving the corporation. With the distraction of consumer smartphones gone, Nadella redirected Microsoft's engineering talent away from consumer gadgets and toward the highly lucrative, high-scale backbone of the modern internet. They poured billions into building out Azure, their cloud computing platform. They invested heavily in enterprise AI and acquired platforms like LinkedIn and GitHub, shifting the company's focus from selling software boxes to providing the infrastructure for global commerce. This chart shows Microsoft's market capitalization over time. You can see the flat line through the mid-2000s during the mobile disaster, followed by a sharp curve upward starting around 2014. They grew from a struggling legacy brand into a company valued at over $3 trillion. Microsoft secured its future by acknowledging failure. They demonstrated that technological longevity depends on the ability to abandon a legacy project the moment it becomes a liability, freeing up resources to lead a new market before the competition realizes it exists.